Hello chess friends and welcome to your Out of Chess channel and welcome to a spectacular game that I found on the official and beautiful computer chess rating list website, the popular CCRL. We have here Stormphrax against Stockfish in an amazing English attack against the Najdorf Sicilian, and the Najdorf Sicilian is of course a very popular opening, but when the fish is playing I always wish that I come back to this amazing opening because it's so incredible how Stockfish is playing these games with the black pieces, and you have requested now many times that you wanted to see more games with the black pieces. So again, a new one here, really spectacular Najdorf Sicilian here by Stockfish 16. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. The Stormphrax engine opened with move e4. We have c5 by the fish, the Sicilian. After a couple of moves, we have c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight to f6, and knight to c3, a6 leads now into the beautiful Najdorf Sicilian. Now we have bishop to e3. This is now the so-called English attack. The idea by white is clear. We want to play f3, g4, maybe even bishop to e2, g4. So many times white will simply launch a flank attack on the king side, and of course black is trying a counter attack on the queen side with progressive ideas like b5. Stockfish continues with the so-called Chevening structure. e6 gives you a certain flexibility to play later d5 if possible, or if necessary maybe even e5, what the position is allowing you, of course, in the middle game stage. We have a4, maybe not the most aggressive way by white to proceed here, but it's, I think, sometimes an unpleasant positional idea that you can face with the black pieces. You cannot play b5 anymore. You're not having so many great attacking chances anymore on the queen side. So sometimes, as I said, very often the line here also played by white, paralyzing simply the whole queen side. We have b6 by the Stockfish anyway, preparing bishop to b7 and hit simply the weak pawn on e4. We have g4 by Stormphrax, bishop to b7, hitting now the pawn on e4. We have bishop to g2, protecting now the pawn, and now here Stockfish plays on a beautiful principled move, which is now the central counter attack. We have here really nice aggressive idea by Stockfish, because there is a certain rule in chess that says if you get attacked on the flanks, then you should counter attack in the center of the board, which is really a beautiful chess principle that everyone should know. We have now a knight to b3 played by Stormphrax, which is a certain theoretical novelty. At least I'm not seeing any more games in the database in this particular line. If you play, for instance, something like e5, this seems tempting, but actually that's a move that black wants to get. Now after something like knight to d7, we're hitting the pawn. You can maybe play f4, but now I think we have here normal development with knight to c6. You can maybe even push the pawns further, but now with bishop to b4, I think black should be pretty solid here. In some lines we can, I think, play rook to c8, simply hitting further the c file. Even in some lines, look at this, if you try to be too aggressive, then you could lose the e5 pawn. So I think so far black would not be endangered, at least in this line. So after move d5, that's why Stormphrax tried knight to b3. My question here for you is, what would be now your best continuation? What would you do now in this particular position? Obviously there is now huge battle around the square d5. What would be now your progressive plan? So maybe you can pause the video and try to see now a strategic idea here for black. Okay, still it's of course a battle around the square d5, so that's why the best way is simply keeping somehow the pressure around the square. The knight on c3 is of course attacking the d5 pawn, so that's why bishop to b4 simply the best move here. But Stormphrax found really a good idea how to make progress in this particular position. G5 now leads now into a very complicated line in which Stockfish took now the pawn, and it seems so that Stockfish is winning the pawn, but Stormphrax had a deeper calculation. Really nice tactical line. After queen to d8, king takes d8, and now finally bishop to b6. So Stormphrax also gained the pawn. Stockfish has now the double pawns, but has I think a good compensation in this beautiful bishop pair that becomes now very active. Also in some lines e3 is a possibility to hit the rook on h1. Here of course you're under fire, so that's why you have to lose the tempo with king to e7. Here Stormphrax continued with queenside chaos, and now rook to c8. Stockfish is preparing now the c file attack, is also preventing in some lines the move knight to c5. Knight to c5 would be then very dangerous to handle. So far Stockfish is not only attacking, but it's also defending the weakness on its side of the board. We have bishop to a5 by Stormphrax, knight to c6 hits the bishop, knight takes b4, bishop takes b4 and knight takes b4, rook from h to e1. hitting simply the weak pawns finally on e4, but Stockfish found now again a beautiful counter attack with rook from a to b8. If you play now knight takes e4 immediately, look at this, you're losing the tactical battle around the square c2, so this is not working. So that's why Stormphrax first defended the pawn on c2. Now Stormphrax is going for the e4 pawn, but Stockfish plays again a beautiful normal developing move, bishop to a8. Although it's a retreating move, but this move opens, of course, both of these files for the rook, and here Stormphrax finally grabbed the pawn. And in the beginning it seemed to me, this wasn't maybe quite the best line here by black, but Stockfish is really a different beast. Stockfish always, when it gives up the pawn, it's always a different story, because Stockfish played now beautiful rook to c4. First of all, hits now the knight on e4. What should you do? Many of us, I think, would play maybe this kind of stuff with knight to c5, but this would be actually very risky. This wasn't played in the game by Stormphrax, but I wanted to show how really dangerous this position can be, because now comes rook to c8. We're simply doubling up. If you try a check, it doesn't matter. You can maybe try c3, but you can never really take out the knight, and after a couple more moves, you will maybe even lose 2 minor pieces for the rook. Maybe you can go for the bishop, but now look at this. After bishop to f3, king to b1, we're simply stepping back, and after rook takes a6, okay, still a dangerous position. I would not even love to play anymore this game with the black pieces, although the engine gives, the Stockfish engine gives here 0.5 evaluation in black's favor. So, but I would really not love to play this game, because these 3 pawns are connected, these 3 pawns are storming. But as I said, Stockfish thinks here that black is better, really well. So maybe you can try something like rook takes g5, but finally look at the b4. I think white has enough compensation also on this side of the board. But as I said, when Stockfish is saying black is better, I'm going to believe it for sure. So that's why here after rook to c4, knight to c5 was not Stormphrax move. Stormphrax continued simply with the move f3, simply fixed the knight here on e4. Stockfish continues with rook to d8. We have knight to c3, rook takes d2, knight takes d2, protects now also the pawn on f3, and Stockfish continues with rook to h4. I think Stockfish found a really beautiful way how to activate the pieces. Stockfish found a great compensation for the lost pawn. The piece activity is now really good. Bishop very active. The knight also on the 4th rank. It's of course on the other side of the board. It's of course on your opponent's side of the board. Rook is very active. From this point on, black is getting simply on the attacking side. White is, I think, here simply on the defensive side. So we have rook to e2 here by Stormphrax, and my question for you here is, what's now the best continuation? Find a nice strategic plan now for black. Take your time, really take your time. Think about this position. If this was maybe one of your own games, what would be now your progressive plan? I'm not saying this plan is completely winning or something, but it's a must plan that you have to play now. It's the only way that you can maybe somehow squeeze a win out of this position. So as I said, try to see now the best continuation for black. Okay, here the only advantage that you have here is this 4 versus 3 pawn majority. Although, as I said, black is challenged in this on the queen side. White has of course a 3 versus 1 pawn majority. It's very hard for white actually to make some kind of a progress on the queen side. Black's attack on the king side is much faster. So that's why the best move here is to play h6. Very important move. After g takes h6, rook to h6, here we have now a beautiful situation where Stockfish is storming with 3 pawns against 1 pawn here of white, and also this bishop is supporting this kind of an attack. The rook on h6 is already very active. So from this point on, I think at least we have something. At least we're doing something. At least we have a clear plan. That's, I think, also very important, just to know what kind of a strategy you pull off in the next couple of moves. So really nice strategic play here by Stockfish 16. We have b3, now comes f5, f4. Here Stormphrax is controlling the e5 square, king to f6, getting of course the king very active. We're now in the endgame stage, and the king is supposed to be really one of the most active pieces on the board. King to b2, rook to h4, rook to f2, and again a new question for you. Again, pause the video and try to see now again the best continuation. That's a continuation of our previous plan. So I think the next move is really obvious now by black. Okay, the best move is obviously g5. This is a must move that you have to play after g takes h. Pardon me, f takes g5. F takes g5. We have now the initiative. We have now really a beautiful, beautiful position where we have created two connected passers in the center of the board. The king is very active. Knight on b4 was active through the whole game. Rook very active, and the bishop very active. Still, the Stockfish engine. Still, this is an equal position. So the Stockfish 16 chess engine evaluates this position as 0.0. So if white plays now the perfect endgame, could maybe squeeze a draw. So very, very interesting how Stockfish created at least some kind of an endgame plan. We have knight to c4, knight to d5. We have rook to e2, king to f6, knight to d1, bishop to c6 by the fish, and now king to a3. Knight to a5, for instance, in this particular position would be very risky because you can still protect this with knight to b4. This would be the optimal way. Even if you take knight takes c6, knight takes c6, still we are faster because white never created two connected pass pawns here. Although this is a 3 versus 1 pawn majority on this side of the board, still white has to reach the maybe two connected passers on this side of the board, has to play maybe 3-4 moves in order to make at least something on the queen side. Stockfish is already here. Stockfish has already two connected passers, so that's why black is much faster in this attack. So here after knight to b4, maybe you could try c3, but look at this, knight to d3 comes with a check, and now with bishop to e4 we can protect the knight and also maybe do some discover checks. You have to maybe after bishop to e4 you have to step back. Now we attack the rook, now we attack the rook again. You see, we simply keep the attacking flow. In one particular moment you could also lose the pawn on h2. So very progressive again chess here by Stockfish 16. So that's why after bishop to c6 here Stormphrax tried to get also the king into the game, but the knight on d5 is controlling both of this both of the squares for the king. The king would love, of course, to come to c3 or maybe to b4 in order to somehow to participate in the game. After king to a3, rook to h7, rook to d2, bishop to a8, king to b2, rook to h8, and now after move a5, Stockfish continues now with the normal e5. The pawns are rolling, and basically white doesn't have so many things that that it can do. Look at this, after move e5, knight to c3, Stockfish traded off, rook to d6, first a check, king to g5, and at least in this line Stormphrax found a way how to include the king into the attack. We have e4 by the fish, we have rook takes a6, so here we have now 3 pawns connected by white, but again black is much faster. Black is already there. Black has already almost 2 of these pawns on the other side of the board. So although white is up 2 pawns, but the pawns are really far away from the action. Really crazy stuff that Stockfish performed here. So after rook takes a6, f4 immediately, and now comes one of the critical moments of the game. Here Stormphrax made, I think, the first really mistake in the game, played rook to e6. This wasn't good, although it's sort of a principle move. It's the so-called Tarash rule move, that you should bring your rook behind your enemy's pawns in a potential endgame. Many of us, I think, would play this move. I myself, for sure, I would pull off immediately rook to e6, but this is actually a mistake that caused, I think, here Stormphrax maybe almost the game. Look at this, rook to e6, Stockfish continued immediately with king to f5, attacked the rook, and the rook had to step back. A better way was to play king to d4. Finally, you have to include your king into defense, and after something like rook to d8, you can cover with rook to d6, and now after rook to e8, that probably would be Stockfish continuation. There is now a beautiful defensive plan for white. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best defensive idea here for white. White moves and at least makes a draw. So what would be now your continuation? This wasn't, as I said, played in the game, but we want, of course, also to study some endgame ideas, endgame techniques, and as I said, what would be now your best idea here for white? Okay, the best idea here is to play knight to e3, sacrificing simply the knight. We don't want to tolerate these 2 connected passers. And after something like f takes e3, king to e3, finally you have created some kind of a static position. The pawns are not rolling anymore, and now you can do something with this 3 versus 0 pawn majority, but of course the bishop is so far holding this position, so very tough endgame. I think this would be also for black to play. Again, the Stockfish engine evaluates this position as 0.0. The Stockfish 16 chess engine says that this should be a draw. I've played a couple more moves. Let's see now what could have happened. Look at this, we simply deliver check. Now we try again to get the king closer. Now we go into an opposition, and the main plan is somehow to deliver check here on f3. But of course black is challenged in this way. White will probably push the pawns here, and if after a couple more moves, also for instance a6 could happen. You have to step back with the bishop, or you have to deliver checks, but you don't have so many chances. Even if you get the king here, then always we stay with our rook here. If you try to escape, then we attack the bishop. If you try to include the king into the game, then we'll always deliver checks from behind. So it's, in my opinion, as I said, very a thematic draw. But with rook to e6 instead of king to d4, followed with knight to e3, here Stormphrax allowed Stockfish a new tempo. We have rook to e5, king to f6. We have now the move a6, e3. So now it's very easy for Stockfish to play the game. We have a7, rook to d8, b4, and now bishop to f3. Very important move now, getting of course the clear path now for the pawn. We have h4 by Stormphrax. If you try something like b5, this wouldn't be good. Then look at this one is happening. Rook to c8 with ideas to play rook takes c4 and then pick up also here the rook. You can maybe try king to d3, but as we said, this would be then the winning idea here for black. So this is not working. So that's why h4 here by Stormphrax. Stockfish continues with rook to c8 anyway, and now a beautiful move also by Stormphrax. Stormphrax played now the amazing h5. You cannot now play rook takes c4. This wouldn't be good, because after king to c4, if you take now also the rook on e5, would simply let this pawn roll on h6. You have to step back here with your king, and now this king is holding this position. You can always try to do something, but the pawns are marching. Look at this. You're trying maybe to do this kind of stuff. We can play here simply e2, but we also promote your queen. Black will also probably promote the queen, and after king to f4, this would be again a thematic draw. Black can always deliver checks, and although white has many pawns on the board, but white cannot escape from the checks by the queen. So h5, very interesting idea, which makes this move rook takes c4 impossible now for black. But of course Stockfish sees that, simply pushes the pawn further to e2, h6. We have bishop to g4, king to b2. Again, this rook to c4 idea is not working, because the bishop is not controlling anymore the ax square. So we have f3 by Stockfish. We have knight to d6, rook to a8, protecting now the back rank. We have rook to e3, and now king to g6, knight to e4, and finally Stockfish grabbed this annoying pawn on a7 and has now completely winning endgame. Here we have knight to f2, bishop to f5, b5. Stockfish grabs another pawn. We have knight to h1, king to g5, and after knight to g3 in this particular position, Stormphrax resigns. So here obviously we play king to f4. Even if you pick up now the bishop on f5, we don't have to even pick up the knight here. Of course, then you lose the pawn on f3. Now we simply push the pawns, and there's nothing that can stop them. This is game over simply here for white. So as I said, the last move was knight to g3 in this position. Stormphrax resigns. So great game in the Najdorf Sicilian, really thematic endgame. Look how the bishop is controlling this kind of endgames when the position is stretched. Although I think Stormphrax had some ideas, had some opportunities to make a draw, but this is very perfect how Stockfish is playing the Najdorf Sicilian. In the beginning, lost the pawn, but activated the pieces, got the king very active. The knight controlled the king in the first place. The king couldn't escape, couldn't participate in the game. So very interesting ideas in the endgames created here by Stockfish 16. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. If you want to see more beautiful Najdorf Sicilian chess games, check out our playlist so far. Here are some games that we have analyzed before, and if you want to see some other top engines, among them also of course the Stockfish engine, performing in the most brilliant games of all times, check out our Commented Chess Games Play by Computer series. Here's also the link, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos. In the end, we always say chess is the best, of course.